Hello there, friends. It's Friday night. I just ended my work week, came home, relaxed for a moment, and now there's nothing that I'd like to do more than sit and make a video about Pascal's wager. No, I haven't prepared for it or taken notes for a week or recorded a bunch of, cutaways and pictures to share. Just my thoughts on the topic, as usual, and it's not even something I've really thought about a lot in the context of this particular video, but something I think about all the time when it comes to belief in a higher power. If you're not familiar with Pascal's wager, it's a very simple philosophical concept that I think it was Louis Pascal, I'm not sure his first name, he lived in, I believe, from the 1613 to 1670, something like that. He lived in the 1600s, and he was a theologian, philosopher, whatever. A lot of those old school dudes, they were polymaths, they had many different interests, and many of these philosophical concepts endured through time, which just seem kind of silly when you look at them in retrospect, until you look a little deeper on them and realize why they're so pervasive. My first example would be, I think, therefore I am, right? That's a very well-known quote. I believe it was Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am. And that might seem like the very first, affirmation of, yeah, I think, so I exist. But it was after discarding all the other things that we can't be sure of. It was the culmination of many different philosophical insights which led him to that conclusion. So you have to understand the story beforehand. With Pascal's wager, this is the idea that, I guess to sum it up in a nutshell, Pascal said, you're better off believing in God and being wrong than not believing in God and being right. Is that right? Yeah. I think so. How did that work? Yeah. In other words, if you believe in God, then you're more likely to have a better chance at an eternity in heaven, right? Compared to some luxuries in life here. But if you sacrifice some of those luxuries in life now, you could have an eternity in heaven. But if you're wrong and there is no heaven, you haven't lost very much. You've only lost some things in this world, right? I don't know if I agree or disagree with this concept. It seems like I understand the depth of it. Yeah, it makes sense if you believe in eternity and you believe in heaven. But the thing that's often left out of this wager is, first off, you have to be authentic. You can't just say, I want to believe in God just in case. That's basically what it is. Believe in God just in case there is a heaven. You can't force yourself to believe something. You have to be authentic, and you have to truly believe it to believe it. We all know. You can't just say, I believe something. You can convince yourself of just about anything, but it takes time, and it's not something that can be done overnight. But the second and more important topic, the issue that isn't talked about here, is the fact that what Pascal's talking about is his version of God. You see, to say you're better off believing than not believing because of heaven assumes already that there is a heaven. It assumes that there is a hell, because it was more on the side of the hell that he was concerned about. Why would you want to burn in hell? Now, if you're a believer in heaven and hell, then you would probably already understand that concept, the fear of burning in eternal hellfire. In my mind, I do not believe in any form of hell other than we create here. I do believe that there are dark places out there, and perhaps dark places that we could end up, even spiritually. Maybe our souls, our spirits carry on, but we don't carry this mind, this body, these memories with us. We lose our self over time because we are part of the whole. At least these are my beliefs, that reincarnation is much more complicated than, oh, well, this person's going to be reborn into this body. There are too many bodies, too many different souls. The math doesn't add up, but not only that, we humans anthropomorphize everything. We turn everything into, the way that humans perceive the world is very subjective. And so we gather in groups. We try to find similarities with other people in the way that they believe, and we reinforce our positions. So this idea of believing in a specific type of God, I think, is where the hang-up is. I've had conversations with Christians before, many, many times, and some of them have been a little abrasive. But in retrospect, I realized that I wasn't the one who was abrasive. I was the one who asked questions, and they became agitated over the questions I would ask. Now, I've tried over the years to improve my tact and my ability to converse with people. If you were a Jehovah's Witness showing up at my door 20 years ago, I would have told you your religion's crap and make fun of you, basically. I wasn't an asshole, but I got sick of people trying to tell me what to believe, and that goes back to, a guy telling me I was going to hell because of the clothes I was wearing or that I had long hair. I grew up with no interest in harassing religious people, but I was constantly harassed by religious people. And that set the tone for how I felt. Oh, these people are pious. They're arrogant. They think what they believe is true. And therefore, I discarded the notion of God, but I was always spiritual. I meditated from the time I was like 14. I don't do it very often. I'm not saying I'm a meditating pro or anything. No, I haven't meditated in a couple of years, actually. I found a different way to do it. But I don't find the need to join a group or any particular type of system, even though those routines and rituals do help us. So there's a benefit in going to church for people. There's a benefit in doing practices and rituals because it reminds you of what's important, the bigger picture. For me, the rituals might be psychedelics or, various experiences I might have. I've gone very deep into my head, and I've, in my own perception, seen the Godhead spoken with what I would consider to be the universal mind. Now, perhaps it was just a localized mind. Maybe it was the earth mind. Maybe I was speaking to Gaia or the sun or, I don't know. All I know is that I have conversed mentally with I have conversed mentally with forces that have shown me things there's no way in hell that I knew, no way I could have ever comprehended or understood, and allowed me to create my own faith in something greater. So I don't fear death. I don't fear hell. I don't want to die. I don't want to burn in hell, but I don't fear these negative repercussions. I also don't believe that we need to give up all the fun things in life. So in Pascal's wager, the idea that we need to give up these luxuries assumes that you have to be, a guy in a basic cabin with no power, no electricity, be an Amish, being completely close to God by not embracing anything around you. I call that complete bullshit because I believe that humans are co-creators. So this is kind of a controversial, position perhaps, but that we are kind of intermediaries between the heavens and the earth, the sky and the solid ground, that we are in the process of being created and evolving, and at the same time creating and evolving new things ourselves. It leads to some very complicated and deep topics about AI and technology that I don't want to go into for the sake of this video. But in a future video, I'd love to really touch on the AI topic, because there's people who say, oh my God, we've got to panic. And there's people who say, why is everybody panicking? It's not a big deal. They're overreacting. I'm somewhere in the middle. I feel both ways. I just feel like it's the natural progression of humanity, but many of the things when I was a kid that, I was interested in knowing where humans came from, where, spirituality developed. I studied religions, theology, and, learned about Buddhism and Hinduism. And Christianity and Islam, and even have a Book of Mormon on my shelf, because when they come to my door, I will invite them in or talk to them. Same with the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses are the extreme example of this. They proselytize, they go door to door, they tell you, you have to believe this or you burn in hell. That's basically their philosophy. If you don't agree with us, then you're just a problem. That's kind of their attitude. And they're not bad people. No, not at all. They just got hung up in dogma. Dogma is the killer, and dogma is how Pascal's wager even exists. Because, as I said, he was basing it on an existing belief system of what God is. And when you insinuate that God is a specific thing or idea or behaves in a certain way, then you get down to some very deep, thoughts about these things like, well, is God an angry God? Is God a happy God? Does God care about me? Is God even consciously aware of humans or even give a crap? Or are we just like neurons in the brain of God? Are we just part of a larger body? All these questions go through my head, probably yours too. But in a podcast I heard the other day, they brought up a great point I wanted to share before I forget. He said, I've never met a person who, or basically, in a nutshell, what he was saying, I don't recall who it was or which podcast. I think it may have been Lex Friedman. Could have been Chris Williamson. But one of their podcasts, they had a guest and he said, never met an atheist who hasn't wondered if there's a God, just like I've never met a Christian who has never doubted their own faith. And he says, anyone who says they haven't is straight up lying. There's just no way around it. And I had to think about that for a minute, because there's always exceptions to the rule. But no, I completely agree with that assessment. There isn't a religious person alive on earth who has not at one time, for even just a mere second, asked themselves, is another religion maybe the right one? Or do I have this really figured out? Even the slightest amount of doubt. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something to be aware of. Because it's also important to remember some of the most adamant atheists were previously believers. It's you have to consider God before you can dismiss God, and you have to dismiss God before you can consider God. It's this. The truth is that everybody's always in doubt of what they believe and what we think. And I don't believe in my version of God that you have to give up any of the luxuries in life. Basically, it comes down to your code of ethics. Why do you do what you do? I can do all the same things I do right now if I was a Christian. It wouldn't change at all. Why? Because I don't hurt people. I'm not mean. I don't steal. I don't cheat. I don't lie. I try to be the best person I can. I try to take care of my children. I try to do the right thing, all the time. And I've heard so many folks who are, let's say, on the extreme religious side, who say things like, well, got even guys like Ben Shapiro is a perfect example. It's like, well, without religion, we'd just have chaos, like people wouldn't have any moral standards. I think that is one of the most ludicrous arguments I've ever heard, and it's made a lot by people who should know better. This idea that morality is owned by religion, that without religion we would have no morals or values. You can't co-opt natural human intuition. We know when we're doing something wrong. We know when we're harming somebody else. We know when we need to do better. And it's not just us. It's important. We can't just look at ourselves and just be better all the time and say, I can improve and I can fix this. We need other people. And we need community. That means we need to bounce our ideas off of others and say, am I doing the right thing? Because other people's opinion, if we truly believe that we're part of a greater whole, then we have to listen to other people's opinions and respect them. And if we don't, then we're not living truthfully. That's how I see it. And this is kind of one of the epiphanies I've had over the past decade or so, to hear out the other side. Not to just say this is what these guys are saying in memes or clips or quotes, It's just like watching, these little sound bites on the news and assuming, oh, this is how the left thinks. Oh, this is how the right thinks. This is how Christians are, and this is how all atheists are. No, the most extreme aspects will always come out of the woodwork. But the average person who just is thoughtful and considerate and just lives their life is ignored. And most of them, it doesn't matter. They might be mildly religious, mildly non-religious, not really think much about it, because the average person just lives their life. Just wants to do not necessarily what's right, but what's right for them. And they find quickly that, we all find quickly, that what's right for us is usually what's right for others too. And what's right for others is often right for us. Not always. And we poke and we prod and we figure out what works for us. Celebrating diversity, embracing our differences, whether they're how we look, how we sound, how we act, who we sleep with, or what we believe religiously. We really got to let go of kind of our hubris and this idea that we know what's best and that we understand God better than we ever did. There's this, when people say there's a spiritual war going on, I often kind of, laugh at that idea, but understand what they mean, and it's true. In a way there is, but it's in the minds of the people, not forces external. It's in the human condition that we need to fight our demons on many sides and work out how we can navigate this world without being so dogmatic. If religions want to bring people in to the fold and help people to believe, then you have to get rid of the dogma. You have to be willing to look at things differently. If you want more people to be Christians, you have to be willing to look at the Bible differently. If you want people to be Muslims, you have to be able to look at the Quran differently. You can't be so dogmatic. You can still have rituals and routines, but many religions purposefully ostracize people who won't take it all hook, line, and sinker, and who question it. And this is unfortunate because there are a lot of people who are curious and just want the community of church, or just want to be able to interact with other people and talk about God. I mean, even using the word God has been so tainted by people who abuse it that I wouldn't use that word up until recently. I would say the all, or because all was a kind of a alchemist's term for the everything. But I've learned the all doesn't do justice to God. The all is everything, and it may have its own awareness or consciousness. But within that all are many smaller alls. You've got, the whole universe. Then you've got these super galaxy clusters. You've got the galaxy. You've got the solar system. Then you have your sun god, Ra. You've got the earth god. And then you have these like forces upon the earth. And these aren't things you can see or prove. They're things that you sense and you're aware of. All through history, people worshipped the sun. It's easy for us to just say, oh, well, it's just because, it was the sun, of course. Brought him light. But it was more than that. It's a force. It is a thing that brings life. And they are all over the place in the universe. And it's just, when you look at the big picture and bring it down to the microscopic level and look at the human body, it's an amazing thing. It really is. Hold on a sec. I gotta tell my kid I'm making a video right now. Yep. What? What? I'll be done in a minute. So my boy, that's my boy. He's gonna go stay at his friend's house. So naturally, that's just part of life. Get interrupted because you get interrupted. And I can't edit that out because I don't have all that technology. I'll get back to this in a part 2 once my thoughts are cleared. I'll talk to you next time. Be well.